welcome back to another episode of the CAFT Fitcast. Matt, crack that can. There it is. And we have kicked off episode number 26. We got a guest today, guys. Pretty exciting stuff. We have a professional fighter by the name of Khai, the Shadow Wu.
I can hear.
Oh, big punches by Khai Wu right now. He's really poured it on. Brad's in trouble. And there you go. Stop the fight.
How's it going?
I didn't know
Welcome,
his name was
Khai.
the Shadow
To
fucking
the
badass.
show.
I'm gonna start calling him the Shadow. So Shadow.
How's it going?
Thanks for joining us today, Khai.
Thank you very much.
yeah.
Thank you for having me.
That's a good question. Yeah, who did name you the Shadow? Where'd that come from?
The name of the Shadow came from after one of my fights. Somebody in the crowd came up to me. I was like, yeah, man, it's like you're there, but you're not. It's sort of like a shadow because the guy couldn't hit you and you're kind of copying him. I was kind of taunting him with the same moves that he hit me with. So then I got him back with it. And from there, I was like, the Shadow, that's it. That's awesome. I like it. So then I just stuck with it.
Fitting.
So let's talk a little bit of background, help people get to know you. You were in the amateur ranks for quite a while, just had your first pro fight. So how many amateur fights did you do? Where did you kind of travel to do those fights? What got your start? Like, give us a little bit of background.
Okay,
there.
so I started training when I was 9 with my brother-in-law, Dave. He was very well known for just training MMA fighters, like UFC fighters, Cain Velasquez, Josh Koscheck, those guys. And then I kind of always got into basketball. I was always playing basketball, but then I was that little guy in the basketball court that kind of get pushed down and roughed up. So I was like, I got to do something. So then I eventually started training with him more and more. And then after I knocked out my first opponent, I was like, I could do this for a living. And it feels kind of nice, as weird as that may sound, but
Not weird at all.
No, it makes complete sense to me.
yeah, I ended up my amateur record was 9-1, and then my pro record's now 1-0.
Wow.
Clean slate. Yeah,
That's
it's
solid.
not bad. I don't like that one, but you know it happens.
Yeah, amateur hour. Things happen.
Yeah,
Mistakes are made.
Yeah, no kidding. Weight classes might be a little different than they say they are too. You just never know in the amateur
yeah,
ranks.
experience levels too.
Yeah, oh yeah. So let's fast forward a little bit. We got through all the amateur. You did really well, 9-1. But this opportunity you got to turn pro, that was something a little different, wasn't it? I mean, you kind of skyrocketed right to the top of that card. So what came about? How did that happen? I mean,
so I think what was so unique about that opportunity was the fact that Taiwan MMA isn't really flourished. And then the fact that I'm my parents' background is Taiwanese, and then I could speak Mandarin. When I went back and it was easy for them to market. And I'm a young guy, 22 years old. A lot of their fighters are up in the 30s. So I think they saw this as an opportunity to really take advantage of, oh, maybe we could use this guy. And then I was tired of fighting amateur. I didn't want to be one of those, football players that did really well in college, but then it's like beat up and destroyed when they get to the NFL and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I thought maybe I'd just jump up and take the opportunity. I want to get paid, And then
money.
Yeah. And then sponsors, and they're flying me too. They flew me premium economy. So I was like, why not? I'll take a flight back to Taiwan for free,
Mm-hmm.
and get to enjoy all the nice food. And my mom lives out there right now. So I was able to go back and fight in a huge stadium that she used to go as a child to see people perform. So to be able to do that was like the most. I didn't even care about the fight per se. It was more like it was just an honor for me to fight in such a arena, and my mom was there. That was the biggest thing. When I won the fight, I ran over to my mom, looked at her, I gave her my medal that they gave me, and then my mom's kind of ruthless. She was like, "Oh, this could be great for a paperweight." She didn't really care about the medal. Asian moms, yeah, absolutely. It was brutal. She said that when people were rolling the cameras and it was on mic too. I was like, "Oh, come on, mom."
I don't know nothing about Asian moms, but that's funny.
Yeah.
I like her.
yeah, I like her already.
No, she's great.
To keep you striving for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It just keeps me disciplined, and have to stay training. And I mean, I won the fight. It was crazy. It was a huge stadium, but then she's like, yeah, come on, we got to hurry up and go. Before the fight, she was telling everybody, she was like, yeah, you got to hurry up and knock this guy out in under 2 minutes because the elders are waiting to go eat dinner. They came to watch you go fight, and I'm like, oh man, okay. I got it done in 51 seconds, and I wasn't planning that or anything, but it just so happened to. It was 51 seconds. It just came naturally, I guess. The guy just ran into the couple punches, and then I was like, oh man, this is awesome. And then kind of took a couple minutes for me to adjust, but then I let it all sink in because, you know, turning pro wasn't like just like a 1 day thing. You know, it's been years in the making, and I grew up in Tracy. You know, so to just kind of think of where, literally after the fight, I took a minute to like let it sink in, and I thought I was like from Tracy. When Kimball first started, I went to Kimball, and then all of a sudden now to like, you know, going to Pleasanton every day, driving the long hours, and now on a flight to Taiwan, and then winning the fight in Taiwan. It was just, I don't know, words can't really be put into like just describing it, but it was just an awesome feeling, you know.
Now, hopefully, you didn't take too long. We're able to get to dinner on time.
Yeah, no, made it to dinner on time.
All right, that's good. So, like you said, you went to Kimball. It wasn't that long ago.
No, it wasn't.
When did you kind of know that this was going to be the thing? I mean, obviously, you had your amateur hour, you had your time, you're 9-1, but I mean, it's a little bit of a different beast going pro now than it was when the UFC was kind of taking off, where you could make those big jumps into semi-bigger money.
Yep.
Now there's a pretty big log jam in terms of going pro. When did you decide that's what you were going to do and put that dedication and kind of turn everything else off?
I think it just goes back to that first time when I fought. I don't usually cut weight for my fights. I don't cut a ton of weight. I walk around at 150, 154 max, and I fight at 145. So that's just me not eating carbs for like a week or so, you know? And then, so going into my first fight, the guy was taller than me by like 3-4 inches. And then he's had like 5 fights. And then after I knocked him out in the first round, I was like, hey, I could kind of do this. And then the second fight I took, I got dropped in my fight in the third round. I came back, and then it was a back and forth fight. I took him down, and I ended up winning the fight, and I ended up taking a shot. And I was like, that's not that bad. And then I was like, hey, maybe I could fight. And then I won like 9 fights in a row. And I was like, yeah, I could definitely do this. And then especially too, the opportunity that I see that there's like, you know, Conor McGregor's fighting for Ireland. I was like, I could definitely fight for Asia, you know, because there's no real MMA fighter out of Asia. I mean, I can ask you guys, like, you guys know Filipino Manny Pacquiao. He's fighting for the Philippines. But Taiwan or China, you don't see anything come out of there. And most of those people are super like non-marketable, with all due respect, but just they just train every day. They don't understand the business side of fighting, because there is a business side. So it's kind of hard for them to break out of that shell, you know? So I thought I could definitely represent.
Is kickboxing a little bit more popular in the Asian culture?
Yeah. Kickboxing, Muay Thai and kickboxing, they're animals at it. But then again, there's no money and there's no real platform for kickboxing or Muay Thai, you know? And then on top of that, I keep hearing everybody, when I was in school, everybody's like, oh yeah, Tracy's so boring. There's nothing in Tracy. I'm just kind of like, hey, I want to put Tracy on the map. So on the amateur scene, I was always saying fighting out of Tracy. And then now it's kind of like, I want to eventually build it up to the point where like people know where Conor's from now. You know, they're Ireland. Boom, there you go. And when I represent in Asia, I want people to know I was just a kid from Tracy, you know, and I always referred back to that. So it's kind of cool to be able to represent so much and have so much support from the people in those cities and countries, you know?
So how does it feel going back to Taiwan? You were kind of mentioning when we were talking here before the show about the production value. You know, it's not just a fight anymore when you get to that level.
Yeah.
A la the UFC or Bellator, it's a production. It's an entertainment thing now. It's almost a WWE without the scripted ending.
Yeah, it's actually pretty crazy. As soon as I landed, and then we went to the press, they sat me in a room and they were like, hey, look, we want to talk to you. Your opponent, the way they matched it up, it was he's Japanese and I'm Taiwanese, or that's my background, my parents. So then there's a huge cultural, like, I'm not going to say racism, but when it comes down to sports, there's still that, oh, Japanese people do this to us, like, you know, history.
Yep.
So then they matched it up like that on purpose. And they brought in a guy too that talks very well. He knows how to, like, you know, sell the fight. He pushed me at the weigh-ins before the fight started. Or as soon as the fight started, he tried sucker punching me. I tried touch gloves with him. He sucker punched me. It didn't land. And then, like there's the shadow. But they knew how to sell the fight. So they had him as a record as 0-1 under their promotion. But that's also because it's like a scapegoat mentality. In case I am the hometown kid, I lose. They could say he lost to a guy that was 0-1, not to a guy that was like 4-8 or something, because he actually had a lot of fights. He had almost 10 fights. They just didn't list them under their promotion as that many. Because if I would have lost him, they would have been like, everybody would have gotten mad. It's like, why is Khai taking a fight with an opponent that's, got so many fights? So they list him a little under. And after I beat him, it was kind of like it's like boxing. They're taking the boxing approach. You have to build up a fighter, You can't just throw him right away into the next, the best guy in the promotion who has 20 fights. They want to build me up slowly. So they actually had a whole talk with me, on how they want to build me up and, the future. Hopefully I could be the future of fighting in Taiwan. And sitting talking to these guys, I was like, man, so this is what goes on behind closed doors in the UFC and all this stuff. So they're a huge company. They have tons of money. The guy who runs the organization, the way he explained it to me is, I didn't get a chance to talk to him very long, but he's like, look, I have a bunch of money. I want to just burn. They call it burning money in Mandarin. He just wants to throw on promotion after promotion because this is his side hobby. But then he realizes there's a real potential for it. And he saw that I was one of the few guys that was decently marketable. I was talking very well. I'm not like Connor where I was dropping F-bombs left and right, but I was throwing little subtle hints here and there. I was like, the stadium closes down at 10, so I got to get this guy out of there earlier so everybody could, go do their thing. So it was like, it's subtle. It's just kind of being a smart ass about it, not really. I'm not trying to cuss too much and whatnot and, put on a persona that's not me. I'm just trying to be me. And I think that worked out because they want me back in July. So we're working on something already. Yeah.
So we've kind of talked the professional and amateur, the fight background, but something that really struck me, we were talking about injuries, and you said you really got into sports science. So what in particular about sports science are you kind of studying? I think it really kind of goes along the lines of what we teach here at CFT in terms of injury prevention, stretching, stuff that Matt and Vinny really dig deep into with their Mobility Matters, but kind of talk a little bit about sports science and how that's affecting your training regimen.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was growing up and we were doing MMA practice and stuff, there was like the warm-ups were ridiculous. It was like 10 minutes, 100 push-ups, just absurd amount of numbers that I was like, I'm still growing certain things that I don't think it's beneficial to me. Like some people didn't even warm up. They just start going 100% and sparring and all that stuff. So I think what I really got into was recovery. Because I knew I was going to be sore and tired, but I want to cut down that time. So I was just obsessed with recovery. How can I be in the peak shape and, back to like 100%, performing at 100%? Because some guys at the gym aren't very good, but then they can ragdoll me around because I'm sore, I'm flat. We use the term flat. Yep. So I have no explosiveness. I'm getting hit when I shouldn't be. So that kind of mindset got me thinking like recovery. So then I started looking into different forms of recovery. My favorite is blueberry. I love eating blueberries. The antioxidant is great, and I love eating. So, I was like, resort to blueberries. But then also stretching. I was never very flexible. I was just never genetically gifted in those areas. I blame my mom and dad for that. But I'm now able to understand forms of stretching. Just stretching for 30 minutes. Little sessions here and there. And instead of working out again, I'll just do a stretching session. And now I'm able to throw head kicks without such a lag time or the tension in my hips. Mm-hmm. And because of all that, my joints are now a lot more loose in a sense, in a positive way, where I don't like my joints don't lock up. I remember my knees used to lock up from wrestling. And then after I started stretching a lot more, man, I could throw my leg over somebody's head, no problem now, So I think that I got really into all that. And it definitely helped my performance because I thought fighting was just why lift weights? You're not going to lift weights in a fight. You just punch the guy. And then I got into perfecting the technique, but then you peak at a certain level. So now my focus it's no longer technique because I hit the same power for, however many rounds, but that's not what I need. I need to be more flexible, faster. I need to be able to perform the same for 2 practices in a row. So that's where it kind of started. Oh, recovery. This is where it's starting to lead me down,
Mm-hmm. What's one thing that everyone overlooks is the recovery, the warm-up and the recovery. If you look at any professional athlete that gets paid a lot of money, their warm-ups and cooldowns are sometimes longer than their workouts.
Yeah, it gets pretty insane. And also, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like less is more sometimes. You don't need to always like just because your opponent's training doesn't necessarily mean he's training smarter. He could be thrashing his body twice as hard. And you like some days I do one session where I put all my eggs in one basket for that session, and then the rest of the day I'm just letting my glycogen storage, replenish, and then just kind of recovering throughout the rest of the day. So tomorrow, if my session is going to be a sparring session, I need to perform, then I perform for that. But I feel like most people just work out so hard that when it comes time for them to perform, like imagine if I have to spar tomorrow and I'm flat. And I go in there and I lose. Imagine me going into my fight psychologically,
yep.
I'd be beat. I'd be like, man, I didn't do well at sparring at all. Mm-hmm. So then I think sometimes less is more,
That's right. I agree totally. And a lot of people try to put all the emphasis on the workout. The workout's going to get them better. The intensity is going to get them better. The lifting heavy sometimes 2 times a day is going to get them better. But in reality, it's the recovery. And how prepared are you for that day of training is what's going to get you better.
Yeah, how prepared. Exactly. That's what I started catering my focus around was today's practice. I want to look great. So if that means tomorrow's practice, if I need to look really good, then that might mean I have to sacrifice some of today. Mm-hmm. So what should I do? I should just lower the intensity a little bit, or maybe even cut out one of the sessions. Or I could just go into stretching. It doesn't always have to go, because everything eventually leads up to fighting, the fight itself. But you can't isolate it as such. You can't just look at, I'm going to just do Muay Thai class today. And then you do it like 10 times in a row, 10 sessions in a row. It's just you kicking a bunch. Now, your ankle's kind of sore. Or now injuries start happening. Your left, because you kick so much on your right leg, your left leg starts trying to make up for the injuries of the right leg. Now you're just kind of unbalanced all over, Mm-hmm. So I feel like, yeah, definitely that's a good point. I now focus a lot on the sessions.
Nice.
Yeah, I think everything you just said, you'd be best friends with Chris Hinshaw, the aerobic capacity coach at this point. That's a lot of what he's discussed in his stuff, glycogen stores, understanding anaerobic versus aerobic, understanding that weightlifting helps you get better at being aerobic because you're building up those quick twitch muscles, those anaerobic fibers that, you might be 70% long distance runner with slow twitch muscles, but if you're not building that other 30%, you're going to cap out. Right?
Yeah.
Your 70% of your muscles is only going to get so strong and so good.
Exactly. Yeah.
You need to attack that other 30% of your muscles, or in this case, as a fighter, you need to have long-term muscles to be able to go a 5-round championship fight.
Exactly.
But at the same time, you really need to focus on your anaerobic, right? Every punch is an anaerobic movement that is sapping your energy. So you have to be really, really good at quick, fast movements without getting tired.
Yeah, see, a lot of the stuff that you just mentioned, that whole thing right there, there's gyms out there that don't even understand a single word that you just said. And then their fighters are wondering why, like they get knocked out. And I'm like, come on, this is your life, like one bad knockout, something bad could go wrong. Mm-hmm. So you need to kind of educate yourself, and you can't go into these gyms and just think that, because this gym says this, you can't take it, word for word. You have to always question. As a martial artist, that's the difference between a fighter and a martial artist. A fighter just wants to fight. Well, a martial artist, it's a lifestyle. You can't just go one fight, cut 20 pounds to make that weight and then gain it all back after the fight, go on and binge eating after you win the fight for like a couple months and then get back into the gym and try to lose all that weight. You can't do that. It's a lifestyle. You have to stay focused, and everything that you just said, you can look at it 10 times over and always learn something new, And a lot of these gyms, I notice these guys are injured and he's training, and then everybody calls him a beast for that. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Come on, you just dislocated your shoulder. You want to train with one arm? What good does that do you? Oh, the compliments. That's what you're searching for. The compliments.
Yeah, that's more like egotistical training.
Exactly.
There's no efficiency in that.
That's more making up for probably half-assing most of the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And trying to feel better about it by overtraining. And we see that with a lot of people. They come in and they'll train through injuries and everything else. But then when you ask them, well, how's your diet or how's your job? Oh, well, I only did a half day today because I didn't feel like going in. And it's like, so you're really just kind of amplifying this one part of your life where you want to feel proud about, overworking to make up for the fact that you're not giving it your all anywhere else.
Or the people that don't come in for a while and then they come in and try to work just as hard.
Oh yeah, like they never change.
And they get wrecked.
So
it's rough.
I completely appreciate what you're saying, man, because a lot of what I've learned too is your recovery day. We our competitive athletes, they'll usually have some sort of recovery day.
Mm-hmm.
They can go out for a 12,000 meter run. This is what, like 4 or 5 miles at least, almost up to 8 miles.
Wow.
And at a light pace and feel better.
Yeah.
Right. And then the next day go back and train hard.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's something we don't see in the fight game as often. We don't see that happening. I can't remember one of the Gracies was on Vice. He does that. He does a lot of recovery. He really takes care of his body. He's a vegetarian.
Yeah, Cron Gracie.
Cron Gracie, yeah. You notice it with him, but again, that's not the norm.
No, it's not.
And if it is, they're not telling you. Obviously, the cat and mouse game, the smoke and mirrors, all these different camps have because they don't want to give that upper hand to their opponent.
Yep.
But a lot of it mirrors with CrossFit. We're going into the CrossFit game season, the CrossFit Open, and our members, they panic. They don't know what to do. But I think this is really great information for them too. You can treat this next 5 weeks like a fight camp and know when to recover. Don't go into Friday Night Lights, give it your all, crush yourself, and then come in and try to do a workout again on Saturday. Like, give yourself Saturday off.
Yeah, exactly.
Recover. Go for a jog. Ride a bike.
I think
just get loose.
It comes down to understanding what you're capable of and what your body has adapted to over the years. Like, how much volume can you withstand before you need to deregulate and take that rest day? And a lot of understanding of oneself is the major key factor. And I think people get tied up around what other people are doing and what other coaches are saying, and they try to just match that instead of getting a feel for themselves. Another thing with the martial artists, you say they're very in tune with what it is they're doing.
Absolutely.
Versus the fighter, they just go off instinct.
Well, I feel like everybody thinks they need to do something to feel accomplished. Like if I'm not working out right now, then I don't I feel like I'm one step behind. That's what most people feel. But like you said, you don't always have to work out to get to where you want to go.
Exactly.
There's plenty of forms of recovery, plenty of things for you to do and educate yourself on. Very few fighters I see that I've met in the past, like they're like, oh, I want a good strength and conditioning coach. I'm like, well, have you read about anything? You have an iPhone, man. Like, you have Google.
You have the world in the palm of your hand.
That's like a weapon right there. And then they're just like, oh, I don't know what to look up. And I'm like, well, you could start somewhere. It's like, I don't know. It's too much reading. I just need to find a coach that knows what. And I'm like, yeah. And then that's, yeah, exactly. So then I feel like that's an issue. That's why I've gone and searched tons of people and then I always question them, and I'm always fascinated by everybody's answers. And then thus leading to, you got to be a martial artist. You got to always constantly keep an open mind, not ego. You can't let that get in the way. I know it sucks, letting like sometimes getting beat up or losing something and somebody's doing better than you at it. But man, it's like a catapult, you got to just let it kind of sit, let the weight settle in, and then just fire off later on, use that as motivation.
And definitely today's world, a lot of our athletes are dumb. They rely on all their coaches to just get them from point A to point B. And like an athlete like you're continuing your education just like we do as coaches, like on those recovery days, pick up a book.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm not at the gym and if I'm not training, I'm reading. Whether I'm online or a new book that I have at home. It's especially in the world of fitness and sports and athletics, it's changing on a daily basis. My background's in kinesiology, so like I've been able to keep my career going, and I'm going into my 12th year as a coach now, and just understanding how things work. I started wrestling when I was 6 years old. My dad was always in the gym, and I was always fascinated. I was always the little guy, but it was always, I want to be the little guy that's faster and stronger than everybody. And now that I'm in my 30s, I'm still impressed with, what I can do. And like, man, I killed myself yesterday, but I recovered the right way. I can move today, keep going. And like Coach Chris said, I could go on a longer run and feel really good about it and come into the gym feeling even stronger.
That's hard.
And I think that's a big thing for you guys is just knowing what your bodies are capable of. There might even be a day where you tell your coach, hey, I'm going to back off today. You know, I don't feel right about this.
Exactly. That's a hard thing to say to a coach.
And in a position like that, are you going to have a coach that's going to side with you, or are you going to have the coach that's going to puff his chest up and be like, no, you're going to go to work?
Exactly.
Just like the coaches that are training their athletes through injuries, and then you find out at the end of the fight, oh, he had broken bones in his hands. Well, what the hell was he fighting for?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
That's like, what was it, Greg Jackson? One of the John Jones's original coaches. But kind of, you look at it and like, that's how that guy was. He trained people to the bone, and now you look at his camps and who does he have? Because all the top guys are smart enough now with the science that's out there to realize he's not as good a coach as everybody thought. He's just he's a driver. He'll just drive you into the ground.
That old school approach.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is the old school mentality
Puke
of coaching
and come back.
is just work hard. And I think everybody's still stuck in those old mentalities that were brought up in the 70s and 80s of how to lift. And now we have all this science, but everybody's just kind of looking past it. Same can be said with the whole nutritional science, saying that carbohydrates are good and fats are bad. And now we're trying to make this shift with this new science. The same thing can be said with training. There's all types of different training programs, and there's not one that's better than the other. But what science shows is you can take a few things out of each thing, make a hybrid format out of it, and train more efficiently and gain more results versus just being a powerlifter, just being a weightlifter, just being a yogi, or just being a bodybuilder, or whatever it is, an explosive athlete, but encompassing all of those.
Absolutely.
All those things and making it to where it's working on your weaknesses.
Yeah.
And developing it to you.
It's like the conditioning that we do here with CrossFit athletes and our boot camp athletes. We can step into Khai's world and do his type of conditioning. And it's you kind of you're humbled in situations like that, or go through one of those old school warm-ups. I still remember the first week of wrestling practice. It was buckets were lined up, those they wanted you to puke your brains out. They wanted to see how tough
puking
you really
like to be
were.
a form of measurement.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost, and I remember if you don't puke, you didn't try hard enough. And it's like, wait a minute. Now with science and everything, you look back and go, if I puked, I tried too hard.
It's like Chris puked 4 times. I only puked twice. Chris wins.
Yeah.
Chris worked harder.
Really, Vinny won because he didn't.
I kept it.
I think Chris ate more.
Yeah, he didn't damn near go into shock. So it's crazy how that's changed.
But we're still seem to be stuck, and I still talk to people every day that pull out old wise tales for weightlifting.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're here for, right? And that's what we're doing here with Khai. And that's why we're getting onto these programs and these platforms is to spread that awareness that this is changing. Like the younger guard, we're all in our 20s and 30s. And Kai's even young, 22 years old. Woo. We're out here spreading a message that, even in the sport of fitness that just started 10 years ago. I mean, this sport has only been going for a little while. We are just now pushing past that belief system that Pukey the Clown and all these things are a badge of honor, where it's not a badge of honor. It's a badge of not good.
Yep.
It's the first sign of overtraining.
Right. And, Kai's over here spreading that proper knowledge and science. And, like you said, sports recovery is so important. Sports science. The science of sport is changing. Here at CFT, we're ahead of the curve, and we're constantly having to adapt to that. And Kai's is probably, I'm sure you're seeing a huge blockade in terms of your training method versus probably guys in your own camp, let alone
absolutely
elsewhere.
Absolutely. And the results will speak for itself, in terms of practice, injury wise, and your fight performance, you'll see a major difference, and I think the biggest key is you got to question, I think that's where it all started. Somebody questioned, like, why am I throwing up?
Yeah.
And then that's where it started. You just got to question, like, the science.
Question everything.
Yep.
Because when you get all the answers, all right, well, my question's answered. So you got to start with question.
That's right.